This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, the experts are saying that this war in Iran may not be anywhere close to being over, despite what the President of the United States says. And if this war were to end and the Islamic regime were to survive, as our three guests in our most recent episode, that Real Talk Round Table, cautioned against, it could have major implications. We'll go there with one of Canada's foremost experts on this file, Dr. Thomas Juneau, in just a moment. Later in this episode, we're going to get to your thoughts on another floor crossing, the fourth, to the federal Liberals, getting them and Mark Carney even closer to a majority government. All of this to come in this episode of Real Talk that is happening with the presenting sponsorship of our friends at RapidX Financial. You can find them online anytime at rapidxfinancial.com. You know, the crypto world moves fast, but your trust in an exchange cannot be a gamble, and that's why Real Talk is proud to partner with RapidX Financial, a made-in-Alberta solution backed by the same experts behind those RapidX, those Rapid Cash ATMs you've seen across Canada for 25 years. I just used one a few days ago at the Saville Centre in Edmonton, Alberta's capital city, but you've seen them across the country. RapidX, the new business, the new arm of this business, is making it easy to get started with 3 ways to trade Bitcoin. You can use one of their physical crypto ATMs, an over-the-counter desk for discrete, larger value trades, or of course the secure online platform. And because you're hearing about RapidX on Real Talk, there's a special incentive for you. When you use the website at rapidxfinancial.com, the promo code Ryan50, Ryan50, will knock 50% off all your fees for those online Interac e-transfer trades. RapidX is secure, it's FinTrack registered, and critically, it's non-custodial, meaning you're always going to control your keys. That's a huge deal, friends. That's promo code Ryan50, Ryan50 at rapidxfinancial.com. Dr. Thomas Juneau out of the University of Ottawa in just a moment, but to set the table for this conversation, one of the more powerful, I think, one of the more insightful, certainly one of the most impactful conversations in this show's history occurred just one episode ago when Iranian-Canadians Nuran Ostadian, Reza Akbari, and Pegah Solari joined us. And a big theme that recurred throughout this conversation, more than an hour, by the way, were the implications of the current regime in Iran surviving this assault from the United States and Israel, and the implication that it would have on Iranians and the Iranian diaspora, including right here in our home country of Canada. To set the table for our conversation, our follow-up with Dr. Juneau, here's what we heard in the most recent episode of Real Talk.
If this regime survives, the first thing that's going to happen, people has to pay the price. Everyone, regardless of you are pro-regime, you're against it, they're paying the price for it. The entire nation is paying price for it.
Thousands and thousands of political prisoners that are being kept in very inhumane situations without access to lawyers. Their lawyers are being detained, for crying out loud. People were just killed and buried in mass graves. Many have disappeared. No one knows where they are. There are families that are really terrified to ask for their loved ones, try to find them.
If this regime stays, they would be stronger than before even. They would be more resilient. And that's a really scary thing.
Absolutely nothing is about Iran and Iranian people. It's all about protecting what so-called Islamic regime.
They are essentially a cartel with the look of a government.
They are oil mafia.
It's an oil mafia, but they attend UN assemblies and gives big speeches and participates in Women's Rights Assembly of the United Nations. What on earth are you doing that? That's a joke. But the world has been entertaining it for far too long.
Neither Israel nor America, they are going to defeat these people for us. They are doing for their own purposes. We are not naive. We know that exactly. One is after land, one is after the oil, one is stopping the other powers in the world. So we are very aware that, but this is the only option Iranians have.
I hope they wrap it up soon, and I hope they wrap it up effectively, and I hope that they do it and leave this battlefield only after this regime has been securely eradicated. I'd rather die today and this regime to be eradicated tomorrow.
Powerful stuff through our Real Talk Roundtable. And now in follow-up, Professor Thomas Juneau, a former analyst for the Department of National Defense and associate professor at the University of Ottawa, whose research focuses on the Middle East, in particular in Iran and Yemen, on the role of intelligence in national security and foreign policy making, Canadian defense policy, and international relations theory. It's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Juneau to the program in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Welcome to Real Talk. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Your newest op-ed, we see it at nationalpost.com. You warn that the Iranian regime is about to become nastier than it has ever been. What did you make of what you heard from our guests from our last episode?
Well, I think they're correct, and I think you can really feel the desperation, right? Of Iranians have been living under the Islamic Republic for 47 years. The vast majority of them, not 100%, but the vast majority oppose this regime. They understand that previous attempts to overthrow the regime by popular protests have failed because the regime retains a very strong repressive capacity. I think there's no illusion that war is not an ideal option. It's not even clear if it's going to work. A lot of people are, including myself, are quite pessimistic and believe that the regime will survive. But what are the options, right? For Iranians today, the lack of options in front of them is deeply distressing for them. And I think people on the outside, whether it's analysts or the media or just Canadians looking at the tragedy of what is going on, really need to understand the dead end that we're in many ways.
People are going to hear you as an expert on Iran and a former analyst for the Department of National Defense say that you're pessimistic that this war can be successful, that the mandate can be achieved, and it's quite possible that this regime could survive. And they'll say, well, that's not squaring with what I'm hearing from the White House. That's not squaring from what I'm hearing on some of the cable news. Well, what leads you to believe what you believe right now?
Well, first of all, I struggle to define the idea of what anybody's hearing from the White House, because from President Trump, Secretary of State Rubio, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, we've really heard competing statements on what the goal of the war right now is. Is it regime change or not? Is it weakening the regime? Is it destroying its missile program and its nuclear program? Is it forcing it back to the nuclear table? They have all contradicted themselves, including in the past 24 hours. President Trump has talked about the war ending very soon, but others, including himself, have also talked about a war going on perhaps for weeks and perhaps even for more. And that's not just semantics. I mean, I see a lot of people commenting on this and saying, that's debating about hair-splitting aspects that don't really matter. It actually really does matter, because what the objective is determines the resources that you're going to invest, military resources, but also diplomatic and other, to achieve that objective. And that has a direct impact on your chances of achieving that objective. Right now, what is the objective? Is it regime change or not? Well, if the objective is regime change, which, to be clear, in theory is an objective that I fully support. I mean, the disappearance of this regime from the face of the earth is something that any decent human being should support, at least in theory. The problem is, well, how do you get there? And then what happens next? If the regime does fall, and the longer this war goes on, the greater the probability of that happening are. What happens next? Is there an alternative that is ready to take over? Is there an opposition, ideally democratic, that is ready to take over, maybe not on the morning after, but reasonably quickly? And the challenge here is that the reality is that there's no opposition, democratic or otherwise, that is ready to take over. And my huge problem with what I see Trump doing is that there is absolutely no indication that they are seriously thinking about what happens next.
You'll have millions of Iranians and Iranians around the world, for that matter, still with family and friends, their hearts in their throats. Many of them have lost family members over the past number of months, over the past number of years, and it may be quite shocking for them to hear that regime change may not even be the driving force behind this. How would you help them sort that out?
Well, I mean, if you look at some of the statements that have come from President Trump, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, they have also said, when they didn't say regime change, they have also said, we are not in the business of regime change. Secretary Hegseth specifically said, we are not in the business of nation building. President Trump has openly talked about accepting a new leader in the country as long as that there is a degree, undefined, of damage to their missile program, their nuclear program, etc. the challenge with this scenario, which I see for now as the most likely scenario, right? Regime collapse is not imminent. If the war goes on for months, it does increase in probability quite a bit. But if the war ends in a matter of days or maybe a week or two, as President Trump has hinted, the regime survives. That on its own is an absolute tragedy. First of all, it's a tragedy for Iranians who have been living under the nightmare of this regime for 47 years. But as I said in the op-ed in the National Post that came out on Wednesday that you mentioned, if the Islamic Republic survives, I think the best way to categorize how it will look is it will be weaker but nastier. And the nastier part is what is really concerning, because it will be nastier on its own people. There will be absolutely no tolerance for any kind of dissent. It will be nastier on Iranian Canadians and Iranian Americans and Iranian Europeans who may want to mobilize against the Islamic Republic. That was the point of my op-ed. But it will also be nastier regionally. It will lash out. It will continue to threaten oil trafficking in the Persian Gulf and so on. And here again, the notion of a weaker Islamic Republic is in theory something that I fully support. But the issue is, what has the regime done? What has the U.S. done, to plan for what comes once we get to that point?
You shared by way of your social media. I recommend that people check it out. You've been a remarkable resource for credible information throughout this. And prior to this, by the way, but you've shared a report via Reuters. Aaron Banco, Jonathan Lanley, the sources here, rather, the journalists. The headline, U.S. intelligence says Iran government not at risk of collapse. What is this regime doing to survive, and how would the United States and Israel, in your estimation or in your opinion, justify, quote unquote, ending this war when the mission is clearly not accomplished in the hypothetical we're discussing?
So, the second part of your question, Israel has been quite clear. As much as I've been critical of incoherence in U.S. objectives, Israel has been quite clear and consistent, not only in the past 2 weeks, but before that, under Prime Minister Netanyahu, that its objective is the fall of the Islamic Republic. So at that level, there's a certain consistency, and there is an objective that Israel is pursuing. In the case of the first part of your question, what does the regime do to ensure its survival? I think it's important to understand for your listeners the huge difference between the situation now and previous wars that led to regime collapse. Think about Iraq in 2003. Think about Libya in 2011. Of course, these situations are different in a million ways, but both of these regimes, in Iraq, Saddam Hussein, Libya, remember Gaddafi, these were regimes that were much more brittle, that were much more one-man shows, that were much more dependent on one individual, Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi in Libya. The Islamic Republic is a different beast. It is a country of 90 million, so far bigger than Iraq and Libya. It is a system, it's a political system that is far more institutionalized, far more deeply entrenched than the Iraqi or Libyan governments were. It's a system that remains the loyalty of a minority of the population, not a big minority, but sufficient to ensure that it has that base of support. It's also a system that retains a very strong repressive capacity. We saw that in January when there were significant popular protests, and the Islamic Republic completely choked, strangulated, ended these popular protests in a small number of days by killing thousands and maybe even tens of thousands of people. As long as that repressive capacity retains, the regime can stay alive. It's also a regime, I would add, that has known for decades that it is under threat by the U.S. and Israel, and has, what in business terms you could call contingency planning, extensive contingency planning. And we know this, that they have plans B, C, D, and E in the case of assassination, in particular, of key leaders, not only the supreme leader himself, but military commanders and other officials, so that the government can keep on functioning if or when, in this case, top people are assassinated. So basically, the regime is resilient in many ways.
So you write about this transnational repression, and I wanted to ask you to dig into that. Again, if you're just joining us in our live stream presented by California Closets, we're talking to University of Ottawa's Dr. Thomas Juneau. You can read his newest piece at nationalpost.com. Doc, I'll tell you, as we had reached out to, in particular, Iranian Canadians and Iranian experts on this file to get the firsthand reports, hear people talking about their own lived experiences. Understandably, multiple interview requests respectfully declined. And I don't think that our panelists from our most recent episode would mind me sharing with you. Of course, as we present this show in audio and video format, we try to make it as visually captivating as possible. I said, would you send us some interesting photos of you and your family in Iran or the people you're thinking about right now in Iran? They said, absolutely not. Can you provide some insights there?
So I'm really good. It's really good that you asked that question. And I'm doing a large research project on what we call transnational repression now with a colleague. We're writing a book on that. I've interviewed about 30 Iranian Canadians who are consistently threatened, pressured, intimidated by the Islamic Republic in attempts by the Islamic Republic to shut down, to silence, or at least slow down their activism against the Islamic Republic. That's what we now call transnational repression, right? If you remember just a couple of years ago, we were talking a lot about foreign interference in Canada. And when we talked about that, we mostly meant foreign electoral interference, i.e. China, sometimes others, mucking around in our electoral or democratic processes. That's a big problem. But there's a whole other aspect of foreign interference that we've really neglected in this country, and that the UG Commission, if you remember that whole public inquiry into foreign interference, mentioned a bit, but also neglected, which is foreign interference outside of elections when hostile governments, think about Iran, China, India in particular, but a whole bunch of others, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Eritrea, et cetera, when they come into Canada, either physically or through cyber means, and intimidate activists in the diaspora, Iranian Canadians, Indian Canadians. Think about the Sikh activist who was murdered a couple of years ago. They also pressure these activists indirectly by targeting their families in the mother country, which we see a lot of. So that's a big problem in Canada. It's not a problem we talk enough about. The government has been increasingly aware, is doing more and more, but it remains to me a neglected issue. So the point of the op-ed in the National Post that you mentioned is to say there is consistently a high baseline of transnational repression by the Islamic Republic in Canada, targeting of Iranian Canadians who are human rights anti-regime activists. That is true. That being said, if you look at past patterns, there are two conditions that lead us to see a heightened and intensified transnational repression efforts by the Islamic Republic. One is vulnerability. When the Islamic Republic feels geopolitical and domestic pressure, it will become more active abroad in terms of transnational repression. Two, it will also do that when diaspora communities in Canada or in the US or in Europe become more mobilized in response to events in Iran. If you remember at the time of the Women Life Freedom protests in 2022 and 2023, inside Iran, brutally repressed as well, Iranian Canadians became really mobilized and active, organizing associations and protests and websites and publications, etc. They were targeted even more because of that activism. So the point of the op-ed in the National Post you mentioned is to say, well, we've got the perfect storm now. The Islamic Republic is likely to survive in a weaker but nastier form, as we just said. It will be under tremendous geopolitical pressure. It will be under tremendous domestic pressure because it is highly, highly contested internally. We will also see heightened mobilization among Iranian Canadians, but also Iranian Europeans, Iranian Americans, and so on, against the Islamic Republic. So this is not an easy assessment to make, but it's a prediction I'm unfortunately quite confident in making, that as the Islamic Republic survives, weaker and nastier, it will target Iranian Canadians even more in the coming year.
It's interesting to hear, you make no bones about it. You say, make no mistake, that the collapse of this regime would be good for the Iranian people, would be good for the world. And you hear a lot of people, our panel yesterday, when I asked them if they supported the military offensive from Israel and the United States, they said absolutely, without a doubt, without hesitation. They said collectively they were surprised that it had taken so long. But I've also heard on the flip side people saying, listen, U.S. intelligence should have considered the reality, the potential outcome that this regime could survive, didn't think it through ahead of launching the offensive. Can you take us into the strategy there? As mentioned, you have been an analyst for the Department of National Defense. This is in your wheelhouse.
Well, I would say that U.S. intelligence community knows and understands Iran extremely well. Having had interactions with them over the years and having read a lot of their public statements, testimonies in Congress, and things like that, I think it's fair to say that they understand what is going on in Iran. And the Reuters report from earlier this week that you mentioned makes that clear, right? The U.S. intelligence community, according to Reuters, a reliable news agency, assesses that regime collapse is not imminent. So I don't think the problem is with U.S. intelligence. I think the problem is with the White House and President Trump. President Trump has surrounded himself with loyalists, with obsequious yes men who do not challenge him, who do not listen to the advice they get from the professional bureaucracy in the U.S., which remains very competent, very knowledgeable on Iran, which has learned lessons of the past. So I think the issue now is not with the intelligence community. The issue is with the White House that has launched itself into a war with an objective that on moral grounds, as we said, and it bears repeating every time, is a good one. I.e. opposing the Islamic Republic, but without thinking through the consequences, without thinking through what the plan B and the plan C is. And if there is one lesson we should have learned from past wars in the Middle East or elsewhere, is that you can never predict and control the second and third order consequences.
Second and third order consequences. Taking a look at our live chat, powered by Park Power, RH. Just kicking in $50 into the YouTube super chat, Doc, to support the show, which is remarkable. RH's question for you says, do you believe that the murder of senior Iranian leaders, military commanders, has made room for younger men, many of whom may have been child soldiers in the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s? Are these men more likely to reject negotiations and fight? What would you say?
So that is a really important question. And I think the first thing to say is that we don't really know the answer to that yet in a serious way. When terrorist groups, to take an easier example, go through a leadership decapitation, does that make us better off or not? It depends. Who is the new leader? Right? Is the new leader more hardline and more aggressive and more competent than the previous one? In which case we're probably not better off? Or is the new leader not only less hardline, but maybe less competent, which will weaken the terrorist group? You actually can't predict that ahead. You have to study it on a case-by-case basis. In the case of Iran, I think the first point to say, if we look at the bigger picture, is to say that this is a regime that has very deep bench talent, in the sense that as leaders are assassinated, others step in and they have experience and quote unquote skill, and I mean that obviously in a technical sense, to continue and ensure the continuity of the regime. Are they more hardline? So far, what the data seems to show us is that they are. The new supreme leader, replacing his father, is at least as much of a hardline and an ultra-conservative as his father. And there's every indication that he will not be compromising, he will not be conciliatory, and he will want this to continue. Will that endlessly be the case if he gets assassinated and gets replaced, and his replacement gets assassinated and gets replaced? Obviously, you get into hypotheticals, but for now, I would say that assassinations serve the purpose of entrenching hardliners as opposed to replacing them with more conciliatory figures.
Interesting theory. It was off camera, so I wonder if I should share it or not. But our panelists yesterday candidly sharing the theory that the new supreme leader, the son, Mojtaba Khamenei, is actually, in their estimation, potentially in a coma or dead. They said he's made no public appearances. Do you think it's a possibility?
Well, I think the honest answer again is we don't know. And as an academic, when I look at these issues and trying to figure out through the fog of war, I find that rule number one is always be careful before you jump to conclusions. It's not my job to try to promote a certain narrative or another. I try to see the facts and make sense of them. But your guest is absolutely correct in the sense that Mojtaba Khamenei, who is named supreme leader since Sunday, has not been seen in public since Sunday. There are rumors that he was injured in perhaps the strike that killed his father on the first Saturday, that also killed, by the way, his wife and one of his children and other senior advisors. These rumors are believable, I would say, given that he has not been seen. He actually released a statement on Thursday morning, but it was not even a video statement. It's a statement that was read by government media. So technically, that is not a proof of life in any way. I would say, on the other hand, that if I were him right now, I would be extremely careful with anything that would give any indication of my whereabouts, because it is very clear, and Israel has said so transparently, that he is a priority to target for assassination. So at the very least, he will not show himself in public. But could he release a video of himself? In theory, he could.
And then you've got the exiled prince, right? You've got the son of Iran's exiled Shah, I suppose, the former Shah. Fascinating insights. I got to say, I learned so for our audience members that didn't check out our most recent episode, to get the kind of the firsthand perspective, including from Nuran Ostadian, who left Iran with her family when she was 11, as in the late 1970s. I mean, as dramatic changes were sweeping. I mean, a very interesting perspective on this prince and the potential of him returning, but very mixed reviews on whether or not this is good for Iran, whether or not this is a good fit. What do you think?
So Reza Pahlavi is the son of the Shah who was deposed by the 1979 revolution. The Shah himself died not long after the revolution. He wasn't that old, but he was actually very sick at the time of the revolution. His son has lived in exile in the US, but also in the Caribbean for all of his life. He has not been to Iran since before the revolution. He's a very controversial figure. Within diaspora Iranians in Canada, in the US, in Europe, he is quite popular in the sense that, for very understandable reasons, diaspora Iranians are in the vast majority of cases strong opponents of the Islamic Republic. In many cases, they fled Iran as loyalists of the Shah's regime at the time of the revolution. Inside Iran, it is important to say that there are indications in the past few weeks that his support inside Iran has grown. There were many verified reports that during protests in December and January in recent weeks, there were some who were chanting his name, who were showing signs. Is it genuine support? In some cases, yes. In other cases, it's kind of probably support by default, in the sense that people are so desperate, hate the Islamic Republic so much, he is the one who is seen as the most prominent name, right, with the most name recognition. That being said, there's a lot of other sides to this story. First of all, he is a man who is in opposition, has not shown strong leadership and organizational skills. He has not shown, and to me this is the most important point, the ability to build a strong anti-regime coalition. He himself, but also his closest advisors, have consistently been extremely dismissive, in many cases intransigent or even authoritarian or aggressive towards other opposition figures. And that failure to build a strong, unified, diverse anti-regime coalition is the main reason for the point I mentioned a few minutes ago, that there is no opposition ready to take over at this point today. And that ultimately has served the regime very well. And Pahlavi, because of I think his weak leadership skills, but also his intransigence, the extraordinary level of aggressivity of his closest supporters and advisors, they have basically played into the hands of the Islamic Republic by preventing the construction of what must be the most important thing, which is a strong, unified opposition.
Thomas, I've got to ask you about Canada's response to this before we wrap, and I will, but RH, a member of our audience, really stepping up their support today with another $50 into the super chat, supporting independent media, which we sure appreciate. Says, we've heard a lot about the Iranian theocracy, its depth, the links it will go to maintain power. You're talking to us about that today. RH wonders, can we analyze Israeli leadership in the same light, given what we've seen in Gaza, as well as Israeli pressure on critics in Canada? Could you draw a line?
It's two extraordinarily different systems that I don't really want to compare in any way. I think it's fair to be critical of a number of Israeli policies. I certainly have been very critical of Israel's continued occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. I've certainly been very critical of Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip in recent years. That being said, the Islamic Republic calls for the destruction of Israel. That's not the same thing as saying I disagree with Israeli policies. The Islamic Republic openly calls for the destruction of Israel. It openly spews anti-Semitic propaganda on a consistent basis. It supports violent and terrorist groups in the Middle East. So from Israel's perspective, its own decision to oppose the Islamic Republic and to say basically enough is enough is I find at a general level understandable and justified, even if, as I said, I have serious doubts on the way this war is being conducted and whether it can actually work out.
It's been fascinating to watch Mark Carney try to manage this, I guess, through the first week and a half or so of this war. Interesting opening statements. Audience members of this show certainly have heard him several times as we've analyzed it. The message has, do you say evolved or pivoted every couple of days? I think, to be fair, understandably, as we've learned more about this, I want to recognize that your column I'm about to reference at theglobeandmail.com was published on the 5th of March. So obviously days have passed since then. But you argue that Canada's rhetorical support for the war on Iran has an audience of one, and that is Donald Trump. Take us into what you're seeing or hearing from Canada's Prime Minister.
So the logic here is to take a couple steps back and ask the question, when Canada decides whether it supports a war or not, a US-led war, and in some cases whether it contributes military resources, what shapes that calculus? And the point I make in that op-ed, which is a point that academics have long seen, is to say, well, what matters is from a Canadian perspective, our most important interest is managing our relationship with the US. That is our most important foreign policy priority. That was true before Trump, and it's true today. When Canada decided to go to war in southern Afghanistan, if you remember Kandahar in 2005, for example, did we go to war in Afghanistan because we wanted little girls in Afghanistan to go to school? No. I mean, we said that, and not to minimize the plight of human rights in Afghanistan. That was not what drove our decision. What drove our decision was we need to manage our relationship with the U.S. We need to score diplomatic points with the U.S. That was true before. It's true under Trump. The thing, though, with Trump is that it's even more true in the sense that we are extremely vulnerable with the U.S. in a way that we were not before. We have no greater foreign policy priority today than renegotiating our North American Free Trade Agreement with the U.S. We have no greater priority than ensuring that our multiple defense, security, and intelligence arrangements with the U.S. survive as much as possible at what is going on right now. What is happening in Iran is important for Iranians. It's important for the region. It has a degree of importance to Canada, but far, far less. So all that to say, when Canada decides to support the war with Iran, rhetorically, because to be clear, militarily or materially, we are not doing anything. The point is we are doing that because we need to manage relations with Trump. We are doing that because, I assume, Prime Minister Carney made the rational calculus, the pragmatic or the realist, however you want to call it, calculus that if Canada opposes, if Canada criticizes, if Canada, wags its finger in a way that we were so good at doing in the past, that moral grandstanding that Canadians can be so annoyingly good at, that would have irritated President Trump, which would not have been a smart thing to do at this point.
Do you have like 3 minutes? I know we're at the time we've asked you to, but do you have 3 minutes? Because sure. I don't know. Did you hear former MP Charlie Angus on the Midas Touch podcast? Have you heard this? This is
nope, I did not.
So MP Angus, former MP Angus, has offered scathing indictments of Donald Trump over the past number of years, in particular on this specific podcast. And we pulled a clip. I know it's unusual for a show to play a 2-minute clip, but he really goes at Trump and talks about the implications in Iran. And I would love to get your analysis on it, and we'll wrap it there. I'll acknowledge your grace in extending this interview into overtime. But we got the expert in the chair here with Dr. Thomas Juneau, so let's get to it. Here's former MP Charlie Angus on the Midas Touch. Charlie.
Well, Ben, where to start? I mean, certainly I think Prime Minister Carney was trying to be careful, but it was a misstep of saying he supported the reasons for going in when there was no reason. It was like the weapons of mass destruction argument. But what you saw with Pete Hegseth there, I mean, they're in the middle of this chaotic war. They've created absolute chaos in the Middle East. The world economy is in crisis. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. And yet they take time out to poke Canada, to insult us, to say that they can take us over. And then Donald Trump again today doubles down, calling our prime minister his governor and treating the Great Lakes as though there's no border there. I think what's really clear, Ben, is that they have never lost focus on their attack on Canada. There was a time when we thought, well, maybe if they were preoccupied with, say, Venezuela, or preoccupied even with Iran or with Greenland, they would stop focus. They never stop focus on us. So what we saw very clearly is this ongoing psyops operation, which is very much like Putin. You know, people used to say, well, Trump's being Trump. No, Trump is being Putin, because it's the same strategy that Putin employed leading up to the invasion in 2022 of denigrating the Ukrainian people, denigrating their sovereignty, and denigrating their notion of nationhood. So the message Canadians are hearing, they heard loud and clear. Canadians were waiting for the Prime Minister. There was a lot of concern, but they knew that the Prime Minister would come through on this. So the Prime Minister has now said very clearly, we are not getting involved in any way. Thanks, Donald. Thanks for all your stupid attacks on us. You just lost yet another ally. Because, Ben, I think the issue that certainly us at Midas Canada were worried about, in about 2 weeks as this thing starts to go super south, they're going to need the navies of Canada, France, the UK, particularly with the Gulf of Hormuz and the chaos there. So they would have needed us. And now they poked us and insulted us. And you think that Canada is going to step up at this time? The Prime Minister will be run out of the country if he agrees in any capacity to do this. So Donald may have done us a favor, but there is no way at this point we want to be anywhere near this chaotic war. And we recognize the real war for us is the war against our nation and our sovereignty, which is why we're investing heavily in drones right now.
So interesting stuff from former MP Angus on Midas Canada. What do you think of his assessment?
Well, I think he raises a lot of really good points. The way that I look at it right now is that Canada only has bad options in terms of dealing with the U.S. We do not have good options. There's no such thing as an ideal, approach that Canada could take to deal with Trump. The best case scenario for us is that we minimize our losses. There will be some kind of a new trade arrangement with the U.S., whatever form it has. Is it bilateral? Does it include Mexico? But there will be tariffs. Trade will not be as open as before. Defense and intelligence cooperation will not be as good as it was before. The best case for us is to cut our losses. What is the smartest approach for us to manage that loss and to minimize that loss? Is it to consistently, blindly, obsequiously say yes to everything on Trump and suck up to him as others have? That gets into appeasement territory where he will see weakness and he will pounce on it. And we have seen Trump doing that. Does it mean at the other extreme consistently standing up to Trump and openly and publicly opposing, resisting? Trump respects strength, but we just don't have enough strength to really impose a cost on him that would lead us to make actual gains. So my view is that the best way to do this, or the least bad way, because it's not a good way that I'm proposing, is to be somewhere in the middle and to be very careful, keep a low profile, accept the insults when they come, don't reply too much, stand up when we really have to defend our interest, which at its core is managing the trade relation. So no, do not appease him on the trade side, but on issues of lesser importance, take the hit. Take the humiliation because no, it's not fun. Accept the insults when he calls you governor. What's the point in standing up to that, right? But if he wants to really hurt us on the trade side, focus your resistance on that level.
Dr. Thomas Juneau of the University of Ottawa, you can read his newest column, Iranian Regime About to Become Nastier Than It Has Ever Been, at nationalpost.com. And make sure to give him a follow on X at Thomas Juneau. In our live chat right now, Aaron says, I need to take a class with this guy. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
Sure appreciate it. We've been looking forward to that conversation for quite some time, and I think a lot of people have been wanting to talk to Dr. Juneau based on his experience, in particular as an analyst with the Department of National Defense and his long-standing commentary on Iran and Yemen in particular. Let us know what you think about this with a comment. If you're watching or streaming us live, courtesy of California Closets, you can punch that into our live chat. If you're watching it later, you can leave a comment on YouTube. Always send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. And a shout out to those of you, more and more of you every single week, that are starting to leave comments on Spotify. Thanks for rating and reviewing the podcast wherever you find it as well. We'll get to your comments on this. I want to bring you a striking statement from Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal. I'm not sure if you've heard this one, about American ground forces in Iran. And of course, closer to home, another floor crossing. We left that story on the table in our most recent episode, acknowledging it, but promising a deeper dive into that. Of course, and the implications of it ahead of 3 by-elections coming up in April. It's looking, and again, like Thomas just pointed out, him talking about war, let me say, I'll reference the war rooms of federal political strategists. You never want to make too many assumptions, and you never want to get too far ahead of yourself in forecasting or predicting the outcome of elections or by-elections. But safe to say, regardless, that the Carney Liberals are closer, much closer to a majority government. Insights on that coming up in just a moment. We're so grateful for the partnership with Park Power. It keeps our live chat powered up. Shout out to all of you that are sharing your thoughts in there right now. We're going to hand you the conch in just a bit. Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider with electricity, natural gas, and internet. And really the only difference that you're going to experience if you're living in Alberta and you take your business away from the big guys, bring it over to Park Power. No interruption in service, no concessions made with the quality you're going to get, with the availability, the readiness of your electricity or natural gas, the speed of your internet. You're just going to pay less. It's that simple. You can compare rates today at parkpower.ca. And if you'd really like to save, we recommend you check out parkpower.ca/realtalk. That's where you can see specific promo codes. There's a couple of them there. If you bundle your services, for example, if you sign up for electricity, natural gas, and internet, the promo code realtalk, all one word, will knock $150 off your first bill. That's money right back in your pocket, courtesy of parkpower.ca/realtalk. You know, a lot of people probably not thinking about solar panels when there's snow and ice on the ground, but the best customers when it comes to Kubi Renewable Energy are booking their solar installations right now, because Kubi's 2026 installation schedule is already filling up. And by reserving your spot now, you're going to be as close as you can get to the front of the line for peak summer production. Kubi offers white glove service that's going to relieve the burden of scheduling inspections, applying for permits. They'll handle all of that. And their team of in-house engineers and certified electricians really makes the solar journey stress-free. So don't wait for the summer rush. Visit the website kubi.ca, Kuby.ca, to request a free solar quote today. Kubi is solar simplified and people-powered. Friesen Brothers letting you know, of course, about their annual tradition, and that is wrapping up today, the Big Pig Sale. You can get more details at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. Wraps up March 12th. That's today. You can order a 100-pound side of Alberta pork for $2.99 a pound. Pack your family's freezer with a mix of tenderloin and chops, belly and ribs, roasts and hocks, ground pork. And of course, for those of you that love making your own broth, your own soup, they'll include the Heritage Pork Soup Bones. You can pick up your order starting March 27th as long as you order today at friesen.com/bigpigsale. And we want to shout out our friends at the Alberta Women's Health Foundation. We're proud to shine a light through Women's Health Research Month. You know, specifically and differently and disproportionately, that's how disease affects women. And we've heard that on this show before, but for decades, research has not fully reflected that reality. The month of March is Women's Health Research Month, and it's a time to change that. The Alberta Women's Health Foundation funds research that reflects women's realities, improving care and outcomes for women across our province. I want to encourage you today to visit give2awhf.org. We'll link to it in the show notes. That's give2awhf.org to support women's health research, because when women's health advances, we all move forward. And courtesy of our friends at North Road Investment Council, an offer for real talkers to get a second set of eyes on your investments, on your portfolio, maybe even to have your strategy, shall we say, adjudicated. Audited sounds a little heavy, doesn't it? But there's nothing wrong with the second set of eyes on anything important we're doing to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. And that's exactly what North Road Investment Council does. Their Edmonton-based team, led by Marshall and Carrie, partners with discerning families and foundations, associations on a winding path with expert navigation through the complexities, right? The changing and winding road of wealth accumulation and investment advisory services for clients in Alberta and across the country. Now, whether or not you bring your entire portfolio over to them, we do recommend that you do that. You can hire them on an hourly basis to apply that second set of eyes, to get another expert opinion on whether or not your investment strategy is headed in the right direction. And if you mention that you heard about them on Real Talk, they're going to discount that rate. You can connect with North Road Investment Council today by visiting northroadic.com. Fascinating stuff from Dr. Thomas Juneau in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. This show's technical director, amid your duties, good morning, sir, flying the plane, keeping the show rolling. I saw your eyebrows raise as he made one point in particular. I made a note to myself, ask Johnny about what he was so interested in from Dr. Juneau.
I just said, about the rumors about the installed new Supreme Leader, the son of the former leader, perhaps being in a coma, all these things. I mean, yeah, that could potentially be it. But also, I mean, he could also just be avoiding a missile being shot to whatever his location is. I mean, if the way things happen so fast, I mean, first day of the offensive, the leader's taken out. I don't think he's taking any chances. I don't think any installed leader or leader after him, if he is in a coma or if he does pass away, is going to be making any public appearances.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think for a lot of people, including myself, and I don't purport to be an expert on this at all, and I think that that's really important to clarify. There's, I guess, kind of two types of talk shows. One of them that would endeavor to bring on expert guests to provide credible theories and insights.
My favorite.
And then the other type of talk show where the host always has the answer for everything. And I decided early in my career, as it became obvious, I didn't have all the answers to everything, and everybody knew it, to make sure to talk to the experts.
Sure.
But in listening to this and in reading Dr. Juneau's work, I'm going, wait a second. Like even yesterday, when our guests, I won't call them average everyday folks because they're, high achievers in their fields and they've experienced remarkable things, including their insights on Iran, the family members there that they care deeply about. They're not living ordinary lives right now.
And
but when they warned yesterday, when they said, if this regime survives, Iranian people are going to feel the pain. And it even kind of blew me back in my seat in our most recent episode. That was the 11th of March. Make sure you check it out. Honestly, I think one of the best episodes we've done. I kind of went, wait a sec, what? Like if the regime survives, like they're getting shelled right now. Like this is, you've got the world's most capable military. And then Juneau says it as well, says this is a very real possibility. I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that.
And I think we need to keep saying that because people get this picture in the West that like people in Iran, Sudan, Afghanistan are like in caves drawing maps. No, these are highly sophisticated organizations, like the doctor said, that have contingency plans. Not just A, B, C. They have D, E, F, all the way down. And like, I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing proxy government. Like, they may not even be in their own country. That's how safe they take it once they move down to B and C and D and E and F. I mean, they've got sophisticated military, missiles, drones. These are not just like AK-47s driving around the desert in they're always driving Toyotas because those last forever in the desert. But you know what I mean? All these pictures we see on the news is nowhere near the sophistication of modern military, especially when you're on a list that's so short with Afghanistan and Sudan and all these other places that oppose the West. And I do think one thing's for sure, the doctor said, and I agree now too. I mean, you can come out every day and oppose this, whatever this is. Some people are calling it a war. Some people are calling it an operation. Trump's out there saying it's actually already over. It was over the second day. But whatever it is, we're in it now. And Nurin said this yesterday, and she was jumping in our Instagram today as well when the doctor was on saying, look, it's too late now. You have to finish this. So whether you oppose it at the start or not, let's just all get behind the West here, because if this ends up bad, if this ends up like another Iraq 2.0, etc., they pull out
Afghanistan,
the worst thing that could happen, and it's not hard to see, is that a triad like Russia, China, states like Iran and Afghanistan, Sudan that oppose the West, all link up together, and then we've got two really big powers, the West and them. We already do, but like, let's prevent that from happening. You have to finish this. You're in it now.
I'll let our YouTube channel subscribers as well, and obviously it's free to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Appreciate that. To the, what is it? I think we're closing in on 37,000. Get us to 40, guys. We appreciate it. But one of the benefits, I think, of checking out the show on YouTube is that you can get our shorts and you can get our highlights and different things, right? Sometimes you're just looking for those bite-sized chunks, those insights. A great short from our March 11th episode with those three Iranian Canadians talking about their family members, talking about their friends. I mean, Reza, who joined us, the guy's getting emotional talking about one of his closest friends and his close friend's son, who were both killed in Iran a short time ago. This is a very real situation for these people. This is impacting their everyday lives. They have loved ones over there. We will be releasing another highlight from that interview today on the 12th of March. You'll see it on our YouTube channel. We'll blast it out on our socials as well, where they talk specifically about how the last thing that China wants is for this regime to be toppled, for this
cheap
regime
oil
to be eradicated. Yeah. Right? They make that very clear point, and I think that that's something it's important to pay attention to as well. I appreciate Tracy in our chat. I want to follow up for you, Tracy. She says, what great analysis. And she says, I agree with a lot of what our guest said here, but I 1,000% missed where his article was published. Let me give you a shout out one more time. Here it is. And I think this says a lot about Dr. Juneau as well. I'm not saying this is CNN and Fox type difference, but when you've got a guy who has columns in the same week published at nationalpost.com, that's the one about the Iranian regime about to become nastier, and at theglobeandmail.com, where he writes of Canada's rhetorical support for the war in Iran with an audience of one, Donald Trump, says a lot. So you can read his columns over the past week. That one on the 5th of March at theglobeandmail.com, nationalpost.com.
I know you got a lot of clips to get to, but I do we never actually played the clip of Trump saying the war is basically over.
Well, I mean, and I thought it was hilarious. I check myself in my sins. I say I thought it was hilarious. There's nothing funny about it, obviously. But it's, let's lock and load it here, because as he says, I mean, a good question from a journalist, is it over or is it not? I mean, and here's what POTUS had to say about it.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Mr. President, you've said the war is, quote, very complete, but your defense secretary says this is just the beginning. So which is it, and how long should Americans be prepared
Well, I think
for
you could
this war
say
to
it
last
both.
for?
It's the beginning of building a new country.
Oh, it's both.
But they have no Navy, they have no Air Force, they have no anti-aircraft equipment. It's all been blown up. They have no radar, they have no telecommunications, and they have no leadership. It's all gone. So, you could look at that statement. We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further. But
okay,
they have no Netflix. They have no.
Well, it's like you could call anything a tremendous success.
100%. Like, and don't get me wrong, the objectives they achieved in like a 48-hour period were, I would say they're pretty successful in my view, except for the fact that kids were murdered and all these other things, and you've driven a government more underground. But to say like, well, I think it's over, but maybe it isn't also, and then to say all their stuff is gone, like, I don't know, like, it seems to me they're still operating. So, I mean, if you took out all these things and they're basically blind, how are they installing other leaders? How are they waging, aggressives back the other way? It doesn't make sense to me. But I do notice after we put out our Segthith short, it's
Hegseth,
weird. Hegseth short. He's in the background, like, he's almost like he's quieter now. It's very strange because Trump will say it's over, this and that, and then he'll say we're waiting for intelligence. He always is like, I don't know. It's like Hegseth has taken a step back and is not like screaming from the mountaintops on everything Trump says now. He's taking this more reserved approach where I'm going to wait for investment. It's really strange.
But I don't know, and this is pure speculation. Okay, this is anything in the back half of an episode is the Real Talk rumor mill starts to factor in. The speculation starts to flow. I wonder if that has less to do with prudence and waiting for more intelligence, and more to do with like the Kristi Noem situation, where it's like
doesn't want to get the axe.
Well, you can't be the brightest shining star when you're serving the guy who likes to be the brightest shining star.
True.
Is that maybe part of it?
Sure.
Is he maybe becoming a little too much of a cult hero here?
Yeah.
Right? Was Hegseth maybe getting a little too much credit as the tough talking secretary of war?
And it's also, I don't think it's great, but Trump, he doesn't fire you. He demotes you. You know what I mean? You're still going to like mop the floors. You're just not going to be in the office anymore. Like how he puts Noam down to a position that is meaningless, but doesn't, wring her out to dry. Just, embarrasses her.
In our live chat, great to see Aquarius Water Bearer in there. Nice handle. Just for perspective on who's checking out these episodes, says a Syrian Iranian here says, my whole family is exiled. My father served the Shah. Wow. Says our family is Christians in particular. Goes on to say their aunt is a nun in the Vatican. How interesting is that? Aquarius Water Bearer, we would love to hear your thoughts more at length. You can send us a note anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We sure agree with or appreciate the fact that you're checking out the show. RH is just bringing incredible support to the show today in the Super Chat. Boy, do we ever appreciate that. Another contribution says, I don't believe falling in line with the West, whatever that means anymore, makes sense for Canada. Becoming more self-reliant, preparing to defend ourselves makes the most sense. And I think that that's a important comment. It goes on to say China and Russia are not coming together over Iran. A recent Chinese statement indicates otherwise. That from RH.
I didn't say everyone was going to get together in a meeting and shake hands three ways, but like it's clear that both of those places are benefiting by being friends with Iran.
Yeah,
and they're just waiting to see what happens here, right? And I bet both of them are thinking this is another Afghanistan, another Iraq. 3 to 4 years, just wait.
Michael's watching us on Facebook this morning, courtesy of our live stream presented by California Closets. Book a free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Michael says this will definitely not change the regime in Iran, says it's going to be chaos, and this will fuel violence and terror, Michael says, for the next 50 years. Dubious says, hey, guys, that's one of the laws of power. Never outshine your master.
Yeah.
So you've got Trump and Hegseth and Marco Rubio, and then you've got, of course, Democrats, Senator Richard Blumenthal. Let's load this up. A Connecticut senator, this was a couple of days ago, comes out of a briefing and this guy, doesn't matter how old he is, except for, let me just point out, this guy's 80. I looked it up because I was like, gosh, he looks spry, looks fit, looks sharp, speaks sharp. The guy's 80, serving his country in the Senate and fuming, like smoke coming out of his ears. Well, let's hear it from him in his own words.
We seem to be on a path toward deploying American troops on the ground in Iran to accomplish any of the potential objectives here. And there is also, as disturbingly as anything else, the specter of active Russian aid to Iran, putting in danger American lives. Literally, Russia seems to be aiding our enemy, actively and intensively, with intelligence and perhaps with other means. And China also may be assisting Iran. So the American people deserve to know much more than this administration has told them about the cost of the war, the danger to our sons and daughters in uniform, and the potential for further escalation and widening of this war, a war of choice made by this president, not chosen by the American people, with potentially huge consequences to American lives.
So that's Senator Richard Blumenthal. When you get that delivery from someone, that vocal delivery where it's like there's just like the slight, like there's a calmness to their voice, but they're just fuming.
I want that guy to read me to sleep. You know what I mean? But there's this layer of discontent that is
because he's talking about our sons and daughters.
Yeah,
right?
And that's the thing. And I know somebody else said in here, align with the West. What are you talking about? I just mean, like, I don't think anyone wanted to go into this operation, war, whatever you want to call it. But now we're there. And, I'm pretty vehemently opposed to it. I'm not frothing at the mouth every day on the show, but especially listening to our guests yesterday who were like, listen, we realize you guys don't give a shit about us in not so many words, right? We realize, one guy's there for oil, one guy's there for land. The other people are just trying to control that section of the Middle East. She says, we don't care, though. This is our only shot. This is our shot to have peace. This is our shot for our families to have a calm, normal way of life. Those pictures you were showing about life before and after this regime.
Wasn't that wild?
They were living lives just like us. Nobody had anything on their heads. Not that they're even against that. You were free to wear what you wanted. To practice
there's
the religion.
Nothing inherently wrong with the niqab or the hijab if you're choosing to wear it.
But the fact that people had the choice, that they had a choice to be, and it's not about inserting Western culture into them either. They were just free and happy to do what they want. Those pictures you were showing literally made me emotional because it was like,
I'll find more.
This is 30, 40, 50 years ago. And it's like we're going back in time with the regime there now. So, I mean, it's obvious. Like, it's not the reason the West went there, but it should be the reason now. It should be the reason we're all talking about.
Here, check this out. I mean, most people will listen to this on
Iran.
the podcast, but to describe what we're seeing, so this would have been, I'm not sure the exact time stamp. We'll show you several photos here. I was talking about, I've gone down it's fascinating to look at how quickly societies or the culture of a nation, so to speak, can evolve or devolve, as I said yesterday. But here would be Iran. I don't know the exact year, late 1960s, early 1970s. But we had people.
You got a mix of people.
We had people writing into the show. We were getting some emails yesterday, like one-line emails, just one line, where people were like, "That looks like that could have been Paris. That looks 100%. Like that." They were saying that could have been any major European fashion center, right? Like just kind of blowing people's minds on how differently it looks. Here, let me scroll in on another one. I mean, these are incredible historical resources, fascinating to look at. But look at these these women, sort of middle-aged women going out, either going to work, going out to socialize, whatever they're doing. I mean, very fashion forward. But I mean, it's just not what you see today in Iran.
The photos are also mixed with you have some women wearing hijabs. You have some women with long hair just flowing out. It's really sad to see that. Like you said, the country is kind of de-evolved, right? Mm-hmm. And Nurin and these women who were on the show yesterday, along with Reza, they're very, they're intelligent, modern women who just are afraid for the people back in their nation, their home, who are being oppressed. And now the last thing they want is for whatever objective this is to fail. And that's what I meant when I said, maybe I shouldn't have said back the West. I just meant like we're there now. We've got to do this. Number one, for these people who we're going to leave them in turmoil if we don't.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to research something on the fly here because RH is like going to pay our lease this month. I appreciate it with the super chat contributions today. Says no offense to anyone. I often appreciate we say to you, hold our feet to the fire. Call us to the carpet, hold us accountable. And oftentimes, you may notice on this show we're more likely to read emails that are scathing criticisms of what we've said than emails that are praising us. Not that we don't appreciate the praise and the encouragement and the support. We typically reply to those ones privately. But it gives us a chance to clarify, or it gives us a chance to further explore something. And RH says, hey, no offense to anyone. Says, but I suggest looking up, is it SAVAK? This is the Bureau for Intelligence, the Security of the State. Secret police of the Imperial State of Iran, established in Tehran in the 1950s by national security law, continued to operate until the revolution in 1979, when it was then dissolved by Iranian's prime minister. RH says, listen, guys, fashion does not equal democracy. Current events dictate otherwise. Not to suggest that everything was perfect in Iran, or that fashion dictates democracy, or that you couldn't have a democratic listen. And I'm getting into uncomfortable territory here when you're talking about people's physical expressions of the manifestation of their religion when it comes to how they present themselves, right? Whether it's a niqab or a burqa or a yarmulke for that matter, or a Catholic or Orthodox crucifix or whatever, right? The kirpan dagger, whatever people wear to express their faith, to manifest their belief and to present it to others, is not an indicator of democracy, of course. But just hearing Nurin speak yesterday, March 11th episode, about what it was like as a 10 and 11-year-old girl, I don't know about you. I mean, I can remember 10 clearly.
That's what I was
remember
going to bring up.
10, 11.
Yeah.
I remember that clearly. And for her to talk about the experience for her as a young girl, for her mother, what her mother said to her, why they left Iran, it's just remarkable to look at the oppression of that culture. I hesitate to weigh in. I found myself in, I don't know if I'd say hot water, but created a real stir a number of years ago. You remember the niqab ban for the citizenship swearing in ceremony? It was it was, I mean, depending on who your audience was or depending on who you were talking to, it was either very unpopular. This was implicating Jason Kenney and Stephen Harper. This audience knows what I'm talking about. Either very unpopular or to a different group, very popular. But one of the things I want to be very clear about and careful about is making my own, as a white guy, kind of a recovering evangelical Christian, however you want to describe it. Respect to all those of you members of faith community. No judgment, no hate. But I want to be really careful about sort of analyzing from my perspective what I think about how other people present themselves. You can get into a real debate, and I think a lot of people, for example, outside the Muslim faith have a lot of strong opinions on things like hijab and niqab and whether or not, women are being oppressed by that. At the end of the day, it's not up to me to say, and I kind of want to stay in my lane on that one, but there is no way that you can compare what society looked like, generally speaking, in Iran in the 1970s versus Iran today. Like, it's shocking.
We have to understand, and I get the comment that you just referred to, but like, we weren't showing these pictures to show that life was better when people didn't wear hijabs.
No.
We were showing to complement the story that Nurin was telling about how as a little girl, she felt free to do and play and wear whatever she wanted. And then one day her mother told her to keep this thing on her head because it was for her safety. That's all we're talking about.
Yeah.
And these pictures were showing.
It was an amazing story she told.
Oh, yeah. It got me emotional. And these pictures were showing there are people, outlandishly, doing whatever they want, having long hair, wearing skirts. And there are also women wearing hijabs and respecting their religion. And they're having the freedom to do so. I also understand that, like, there is a whole thing of how the U.S. has been over there meddling. When people say when people are in the chat saying back the West, this is their fault. We do understand, like, back in 1953, the CIA overthrew. There's a long history of meddling there. And then, of course, the revolution in 1979. What I'm just saying, bottom line is, like, this is happening now. We're over there now. And especially from our guest mouths yesterday, the last thing they want to see now, it doesn't matter what they wanted to see before. The last thing they want to see now is for them to not finish this properly, to pull out early, to be there too long, messing it up, whatever you want to say. It has to be successful now because these people, their lives, the future of their society and civilization is basically on the line. And it's really scary when you've got a couple of, I'll just say, clowns like Trump and Hegseth at the forefront of it. It's scary.
I was, we try to respond to as many comments as we can, including on our YouTube channel, and we sure appreciate everybody that does leave a comment. And there was one, and then every once in a while, I'm like, don't take the bait. Charles Adler taught me this. Charles is like, swim past the baited hook, young grasshopper. Do not take the bait. But I saw one comment yesterday. I couldn't help myself. On our episode, these three brave Iranian Canadians that come on here said we may not want to show photos of our family on the show, but we'll sure talk about it and we'll sure share our perspective. It is bravery on display. And one of the comments, which I didn't love, was, who cares what these people think? This is up to Iranians in Iran to decide. And that's why I thought that it was so important to touch on Dr. Juneau's piece at nationalpost.com and ask him about transnational repression, where he writes, I'll just read from his piece. It deploys a range of tactics. He says it says the diaspora globally, including here in Canada, a range of tactics, the direct and physical targeting of dissidents abroad, like in Canada, by harassing them, in extreme cases attempting to assassinate them, online abuse, threats, defamation, with the goal of discrediting dissidents, wearing them down. And he says, when dissidents in the diaspora still have family inside Iran, the Islamic Republic also threatens to freeze their bank accounts or damage their careers, while often sending intelligence officers to interrogate them. I would also say this, and I'm not trying, again, I am not an international relations expert. have a very surface level. I'm like a normal, this is real talk, guys. I'm just like kind of your normal, average, ordinary guy that tries to keep his finger on the pulse. And this audience keeps us sharp. I'm not trying to compare Iran and India. I'm sure people smarter than me could probably come up with some comparisons. But if we've learned anything as Canadians, from what we've seen, not limited to, but particularly in British Columbia, Supriya Dwivedi has been a remarkable source of insight for us on this, joins us first episode of every week, taking a look at Canadians being murdered, like killed, on Canadian soil by Indian agents. And it's not a secret. So, just to say that because someone is on Canadian soil, that doesn't make them safe, and that doesn't make them immune from influence, from harassment, or even from physical violence, let alone what could happen to their family members abroad. And so I didn't love the comment about who cares what these people think, and I do think that it's important to acknowledge that people show great courage and oftentimes take great risks in going on the record to share what they believe to be so very important. And I thought that if you listen to our episode from the 11th of March, one of our panelists, Pega Solari, says something, I think it's near the end, Johnny. It's like in the last 5-10 minutes of the interview, where she says, and it was in the short that we played off the top of this show to introduce Thomas. She says, if I die tomorrow, she says, you better not stop this war because of that. Don't stop this war on my account, right? I don't believe it's an exact quote, but my memory of what she said is, if I die tomorrow, I hope the regime is eradicated the day after. You know, I mean, it is on her radar. That's not hyperbole from her. Mm-hmm. She shared with us after, and I hesitate to bring and put on the record what people say in our green room as we debrief and have a coffee after the show. You want to sort of protect that confidence, but she shared with us that people that care about her deeply have warned her about speaking out, and yet she has. And I just think that it truly is remarkable. And I guess what I'm doing is showing how much we appreciate what people lay on the line when they come on this show to give us the insights that I think are so important for regular folks like us to understand. Let's turn the page. Let's talk about floor crossing, because this is a big story, obviously, in Canada. And there's more happening in the world aside from Iran, despite the fact that it's dominating the headlines. Before we get there, I want to direct you, friends, to thehelmclothing.com. If you're in the market for luxury casual wear or custom suits, if you absolutely must look your best, maybe you've got a huge client coming to town, maybe you've got a big date coming up, whatever it is, there's nothing like a new look to inspire confidence. I experience it personally when I walk into the Helm Clothing or visit thehelmclothing.com. They've got an incredible 3-story luxury retail experience. Just a few blocks, it's not even a few blocks, Johnny. It's like a block and a half from our studio here. I'm going to have to pop back in there and shoot the spring collection. I'm sure that they've got that rolling out. I know last time I was in there a couple of weeks ago, they've already been bringing in the latest from Brunello Cucinelli as an example. These like phenomenal sandals. Like we said, luxury casual wear, or if you're going full bore and you're looking for a custom luxury suit, they carry all the big brands, including Xenia, one of my personal favorites. And then, of course, everything you need to look sharp this spring. But if you visit thehelmclothing.com, you can step into the latest. They've got their latest arrivals all laid out there, of course, including refined sneakers, elevated loafers, and versatile slides. Crafted in Italy by the team at Brunello Cucinelli and designed to move effortlessly through the season. TheHelmClothing.com is an experience, and keep in mind when you're shopping there online, regardless of where you are on planet Earth, the promo code REALTALK, that's all one word, REALTALK, will take 10% off your entire order at TheHelmClothing.com. You know, we're so proud to be supporting the Ben Stelter Foundation. So much love for Ben and, of course, the Stelter family who dealt with the tragic loss of this remarkable young guy, but what they are doing to preserve his legacy and improve cancer care in particular for children across the country is just absolutely unbelievable. That includes their Hearts and Hands poker tournament. If you love playing poker, or if you've just got a big heart for charity, I invite you to join us at the Yellowhead Pier Casino, April 16th and 17th. I'm going to be there at a table on the 16th, and I'd love to be there with you, Real Talkers. Up to $50,000 in cash and prizes available. Johnny, if you make the final table at this poker tournament, you get a custom champion ring. Looks like a Stanley Cup ring. It's unbelievable. You can check it out at benstelterfoundation.com. That's where you can register. They're also looking for sponsors, too. So if you have a heart for this, specifically cancer care for kids, and who doesn't, we invite you to register to sponsor and or play in the Hearts and Hands Poker Tournament coming up April 16th and 17th for benstelterfoundation.com. You can read more about the Ben Stelter Center for Proton Therapy and Neuroscience, bringing world-class cancer treatment closer to home. Unbelievable stuff. Every time I see a picture of Ben, I'm just looking at that website. What an amazing young kid Ben was. And, you and I won't go too long on this because I'm probably just going to get emotional, but you and I both having worked together at the Oilers for 7 seasons, me as the in-game host, you as the DJ. Have you ever seen a fan? Have you ever seen a young person connect with not just a fan base, but with like a country like Ben Stelter? It was unbelievable. Yeah. Connor and Leon befriended him.
Yeah, it was amazing.
As he was fighting cancer. They'd have him right there on the glass. They'd have him in the dressing room from time to time. And I just, they reached out to us and said, hey, can we count on your support for this? I said, you don't need to ask twice. Just unbelievable. Big story, closer to home, obviously, as the federal Liberals have welcomed their 4th floor crosser. And the Real Talk rumor mill, Johnny, is churning out theories that there could be more to come. But what it means for the math, for those of you following at home, is that with these 3 by-elections looming, the 13th of April is when those by-elections will go down. The Liberals don't need to sweep anymore. They can take 2, and they'll find themselves in majority territory, which would have huge implications for Mark Carney and his government. It would have huge implications for Pierre Poilievre. It would have big implications for Conservative MPs that may be right now dutiful soldiers, but may not be looking to stick around in opposition for another number of years. Of course, there'd be no reason for Mark Carney to call an election anytime soon if he gets there, and there would obviously be implications for Canadians. It would impact our democracy and the functioning of our government. It would impact what the Liberal government could get done in achieving its mandate. We'll get to a couple of different takes on this, but why don't we start with the Prime Minister himself walking down the stairs in Ottawa. Johnny, this is pretty remarkable stuff. This is a video that was shared by journalist Judy Trin. She portrayed it, by the way, did Judy, as Carney luring another MP. And I saw in the comments, not everybody appreciated it. But here's the Prime Minister standing alongside the newest Liberal MP out of Nunavut, Lori Idlout. Check it out.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity.
That's Mark Carney speaking en français. We presented that. This one's a short, vertical style. Lori Idlout, Mark Carney coming down the stairs. This just a short time ago in Ottawa, the newest Liberal MP.
Against the Gulf countries.
Prime Minister,
Prime Minister,
Good morning, everyone. Well, I'm very honored to welcome Lori Idlout to our caucus. It is a great pleasure. One of Canada's greatest constituency MPs. You represent a riding that is the size of Mexico, and very down to earth. And we've had conversations about what we can do, both large and small, in Nunavut. Large projects, but also helping everyone get ahead. So all for Canada, Canada for all. C'est un grand plaisir. Je suis très honoré d'être une députée avec Lori. Elle va être au sein du caucus libéral à partir de maintenant. Une députée extraordinaire à l'échelle du...
All right, so there he is in English and en français. Mark Carney welcoming MP Lori Idlout to caucus. The NDP interim leader, Don Davies, of course, we're keeping an eye on who the next permanent leader, or at least the next leader of the NDP will be. Will it be Avi Lewis? Will it be Heather McPherson? Will it be Rob Ashton? We've spoken to all three of them. You can find those interviews in our archive if you'd like to check them out. But interim leader Don Davies issuing a statement a short time ago, confirming the move. Of course, everybody knew it, but suggesting that floor crossers should step down and run in a by-election. Says, quote, "We're very disappointed that Lori Idlout has decided to join the Liberal caucus. The position of the New Democrats on floor crossing is long-standing and clear. We believe that when someone rejects the decision of their electors and wants to join another party, they should put that decision to their voters." Now, I've always thought it was interesting to hear the different perspectives on floor crossing when a party's losing versus gaining, right? There's that famous clip from Prime Minister Stephen Harper when he said, can I paraphrase him and use the word bitching? Because Harper didn't say it, but I'll take some editorial license. This is not a quote from Stephen Harper, but he basically said the only people or the only parties that are bitching about floor crossing are the parties that nobody ever wants to cross to, which I thought was kind of amusing and also true. And we've seen Conservatives, including Stephen Harper, welcome floor crossers from the Liberals. We've also seen the Liberals welcome floor crossers from the Conservatives, and in this case, from the NDP. And we've gotten into this on a number of fronts. We talked to Sharon Carr about it. We've talked to Supriya about it, and others. I believe Senator Charles Adler gave us his take in our most recent conversation with him. It may not always be popular, but it is part of the deal. It is one of the rules of engagement. It's a political option for elected officials who oftentimes are sticking their neck out there and potentially risking the tenure when it comes to whether or not they'll get reelected. And of course, there's a lot of math that goes into that. There's posturing that goes into that. You have to assume there would be community consultation that might go into that. We had a very similar conversation with Matt Genereux, a South Edmonton MP who, as you know, crossed to the Liberals relatively short time ago. I think shocking most people. That had not been the narrative. That had not been the message. The plan was for MP Genereux to step back into private life right around now. Pierre Poilievre had set the table there, saying that it would be March, that Genereux would be leaving politics. And, well, as you know, obviously that's not the way it unfolded. And we heard from audience members on both sides of the coin, some of you saying that Genereux made a very smart move, a very astute move, makes sense with a huge investment coming to Alberta and in particular to the Edmonton Airport, to YEG, as part of Canada's increased defense spending. It makes a lot of sense that Genereux may be on that file. He's wanted to sit in government for quite some time. He was accustomed to that as an MLA. And as you're about to hear from former NDP leader Thomas Mulcair, a lot of people are applying that same logic to Lori Idlout's decision, to her move, that it's not necessarily political opportunism. It may be because she can get more done for her constituents, that strategically, maybe it's not the worst. Maybe it's even justifiable. Here's Thomas Mulcair.
In the case of Lori Idlout, I think it's one of the clearest examples of somebody who's saying, okay, I come from a part of Canada that has serious needs. I'm sitting with the rump of the NDP. We're down to 7 seats. Now they're down to 6 with her departure, and they're going to be down to 5 because Alexandre Boulris is leaving the NDP to go to Quebec solidaire. So, I mean, she says, what can I get that done there? I mean, the needs are unlimited, and the ability to move things when you're in the fourth party are very, very limited. So she's looking at the situation, I think, with clear eyes and saying, I want to get what's best for the people in the region that I'm from, and the best is going to be attainable by being part of the government. It's as simple as that. And I don't think that it's a lesson that's going to be missed by other people who might be fence sitting right now. You know, people in the GTA who thought that the Conservatives were coming in, a lot of cultural communities went hard with the Conservatives. They got in, several of them, and now they're probably saying, I can't deliver anything. That's something that's going to seep through with a lot of people who are sitting on backbenches on the opposition side right now.
Pretty interesting stuff. When you take a politician out of politics, you know, and you get Thomas Mulcair, who you know, like many politicians, like many leaders in politics and industry and otherwise, can be a bit of a firebrand. You know, had fiery. I mean, I interviewed him a number of times, but to hear him just offer that logical, pragmatic take on it and say she can get more done here, right? And in our live chat, I've seen the exact same sentiments shared. Like 549RR says, am I saying that, by the way, right? Correctly? Send me a note. Let me know. I want to get these nailed down properly. Is 549RR? Am I missing something? Says Matt Genereux has way more power now to represent his constituents. Ms. Katie says elections are expensive. If that's the case, you should have to abide by the electorate voting you out and not having Canadians pay you to get elected in a riding you don't live in. Interesting. Anubius says the reality is we should be voting for the individual as opposed to voting for the party, or in particular the prime minister. We don't really vote for the prime minister, do we? Not like in the United States when you vote for the president, but we still do kind of sort of vote for the prime minister in the sense that I think a lot of people are influenced to vote for the candidate representing the party that has the leader and the policy that has most impressed them. Anubius goes on to say, your representative is that person. And if they cross the floor, your representative is still that person. Interesting comments here as well. Marie says, Lori Idlout could have gone on to sit as an independent. Floor crossing is certainly a sign of problems with the party that they left. And I think you could support that statement or support that theory with both the Conservatives and the NDP. There's questions around their leadership. I mean, not among Conservative loyalists. Pierre Poilievre at their recent convention, a massive vote of support after losing the election, losing his own riding, coming back, winning in Alberta. But you could argue that there are cracks in the foundation there. It's probably not maybe the last MP that we've seen cross. And you could say the same thing with the NDs, right? Now 6 MPs, not 7.
I'm sitting here listening, and I'm like, I have so many things to say. Number one is just like we referred to Iran too. I think Carney, you're in it now. Like, why would you get this many people to come over and then be 2-3 seats away and not keep going? Of course they're going to keep going. Of course they're going to try and get that majority government. They're going to be pushing people harder than ever to come over. I do, Thomas here in our live chat said, what did he say? Democracy is not a democracy when people are being basically... when a minority government can buy a majority by bribing floor crossers. Well, yes and no. I think it's what you said there. I'm trying to go back to what you said about the cracks. Because, I think it makes sense when NDP, like this one didn't surprise me. NDP and liberal values are kind of, aligned for the most part. It's, there's certain things they disagree on. But it is strange to see so many conservatives coming over. But then and I do kind of agree that maybe there should be, the electorate who put that MP in power should have a say in, hey, we didn't vote for this. But at the same time, if a person, is on a team and they look at the leader and they look at the cracks, like you're saying, and they don't want to be on a sinking ship, and they look across and there's a lifeboat and there's, a bit of rations in there and maybe some Diet Coke is their favorite pop. There's a 6-pack in the back. You know what I mean? Some of the things that they want are in the life raft. I mean, can you blame them for jumping into it?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting how you present that because I know that they probably
in the end, they all want the best for Canadians. They're not doing this to get, a timeshare in Mexico or whatever, like these people with conspiracy theories that they're getting money and all these things. They really want to do the best for, I think, the people they represent. And if they see a little bit better options over there...
And I mean, the life raft analogy is not a bad one. They would suggest that it's not a move of desperation. It's a move of strategy to level up what they can deliver to their constituents kind of thing. When it comes to Thomas's comment, though, in the live chat, I wrote down these 2 words as you read it, buy and bribing.
Yeah.
And I think everyone acknowledges that there are typically, generally speaking, whether they're on the record or off, and obviously they're mostly off the record, incentives for MPs to consider crossing the floor because they will do so typically at some personal cost. There will be a brief period of discomfort where their name will be trending across the country and they will hear from hundreds or thousands of detractors, of people who feel betrayed, of people who are very upset. I understand it. People who have donated to their campaigns, people who have knocked doors for them, people who have volunteered for them, right? People who voted for them. In maybe in Lori Idlout's case, because she was not Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre's candidate, right? Maybe folks in her riding, some of them were voting for it because they liked what the NDP was presenting. There were people certainly, I think, that felt very fired up about Matt Genereux's move. Of course, because, when you're talking in Alberta about an MP becoming the third Liberal MP in the entire province to join the federal Liberals, it's a rarity. You don't often see it. There's perhaps more polarization between Liberals and Conservatives in Alberta than anywhere else in Canada, maybe in Saskatchewan, but certainly it's very polarizing. It's not like, you looked at the other crossings, Michael Ma, Chris D'Entremont. The D'Entremont always felt like a bit of a weird fit because Chris D'Entremont is believe whatever you want, that's fine, but was a member of like the pro-life caucus. He's a social conservative. To cross to the Liberals, people thought that was kind of interesting. Interesting fit. Michael Ma, I think his has for the most part flown under the radar. The only thing people remember about that one is that the guy double dipped on Christmas parties. That's the only thing people remember about Michael Ma's story. It happened around the holidays. A veteran move. Go to the conservative Christmas party, get your gift. He doesn't even bring a gift.
Respect
for the gift exchange. Takes a photo with Pierre Poilievre next morning, crosses the floor, then attends a Liberal party the next night. Unbelievable.
Can you see him in the mirror, like getting in the second suit and being like,
Our buddy Jordan from Jordan from Play Alberta uses this word all the time. Every time he uses it, I think, what a great word. He says, that is diabolical. Michael Ma's crossing was diabolical.
It was.
But the point is, you could find, in certain ridings where, depending on the election, and, it could be like, 55-45. I'm breaking it down obviously too simply. There's more parties, more candidates, but let's just say there are these so-called swing ridings where they're not guaranteed, and floor crossings would be less risky in those ridings. And then you also have scenarios like, and I'm not speaking for Matt Genereux. I'm definitely not speaking for Matt Genereux. But it's very possible that he has already decided that this will be his last term as an MP, right?
Yeah.
And he's going to say, listen, I could either leave, and these are my words, not Matt's. Let me be very clear. But it's widely acknowledged that he was being pressured, that he was being harassed, that there were attempts to intimidate him, including from House Leader Andrew Scheer. Genereux has not necessarily laid that out, but if you have Ottawa insiders like Real Talk does, or if you could just pay attention to what's out there in front of you and, achieve the obvious, understand the obvious that's happening. Maybe Genereux has a moment where he says, I'm not leaving under duress, as a matter of fact. We've told this story before. There's reason to believe that when Matt Genereux, and you're hearing this first on Real Talk, if you listen to every episode, it's not the first time you've heard it here on Real Talk, but it's not been reported elsewhere. Genereux, when he tendered his resignation, when he resigned from Conservative caucus, the report is that he was doing so effective immediately. This was before the holidays. Pierre Poilievre goes in front of cameras, reportedly, says the Real Talk rumor mill. Poilievre goes in front of cameras to talk about it and says Matt Genereux has confirmed he will be resigning this spring, which was reportedly news to Matt Genereux. Poilievre didn't want the floor crossing to happen, not the floor crossing. He didn't want the resignation to happen before his leadership review, or at least that's how it lines up on the calendar. So what happens here is Poilievre goes in front of the mic and says he's leaving in the spring, and Genereux goes, oh, really? Oh, really? Because I was pretty sure I was leaving right now. So what happens?
Tried to walk the
dog.
Had
he left, he tried to walk the dog. Had he left in the fall or into the winter, he would have been gone. Right? The riding would have been vacant. There would be 4 by-elections on April 13th, but instead there's 3 because he sticks on. And what happens over the months to follow is that Genereux has time to think. And he has confirmed that it was not the PMO that reached out to him. It was Genereux that reached out to the Prime Minister's office ahead of his floor crossing because he's still on the job. He was still on the job as a so-called lame duck MP that everybody knew was leaving up until the moment that he wasn't leaving. And had Poilievre not pulled that stunt of keeping him around until the spring, Genereux would not have had the option to cross the floor, and they'd be in a very different position. I think that's a fascinating story. But, of course, we should be talking and focusing on the move by Lori Idlout. It's just
you need background on this.
There's been 4.
Like you said, people are saying bribery. People are saying bags of money. It's so much more complicated than that. A lot of the times it has to do with people who are thinking about the end of their tenure, what the rest of their career is going to be like, and a lot of the times it has to do with feelings. And I think these people who crossed, generally the number one thing is they have a bad feeling about the leader. They have a bad feeling about someone who lost an election, Pierre Poilievre. Like, let's face the facts. That's what happens. And the game plan doesn't adjust. Nothing is different. Everything sounds the same. And I like this comment from Justin, who also said, what did he say here? Justin, just because people feel they're voting for a party doesn't mean they do. I totally agree. Another reason why when you go to the polls, don't just vote liberal or conservative. Listen to what your MP is saying, because if they sound like someone who has a few values that align with the party that you're not voting for, there could be a chance that they change their opinion and do a flip in the future.
Well, and Ms. Katie hits the nail on the head here, by the way. Thanks for your YouTube channel membership, Ms. Katie. We appreciate you. Says independents don't have access to office space, to staff budget. Says you still can't really achieve anything for your constituents. True, and maybe not true to a certain degree. You are absolutely correct. Sitting as an independent, people say if you're going to leave your party, you cross the floor, so to speak, you should sit as an independent till the next election. You do have some influence. I don't want to compare Elizabeth May to an independent. That would be disrespectful, but Elizabeth May did have power and sway when it came to the budget. She did have influence when it came to the budget. Right after it was out, we talked to her. It was a great show. Recommend you check that out. She was like throwing bombs for 30 minutes on the show. I really appreciated it. So it's not that you are completely powerless, but you are right, Ms. Katie, in that it is very lonely as an independent, and you do not have, as she noted, you do not have the resources. There is no comparison. If you're a federal member, if you're a member of parliament, someone that's been in politics for 20 years, accustomed to certain resources, including staff, including data, including research, including caucus support, there is no comparison to sitting as an independent versus crossing over to what will soon be, or could, let me be careful, what could soon be, what will likely soon be a majority government with a party that is only getting, and it's going to sound like I'm stumping for the Liberals here. That's not my intent, but this is what the data shows. This is what the polling shows. And if you're driven or influenced at all by common sense, this is obvious. A party whose popularity is moving in the right direction, including in jurisdictions, regions of Canada where it's typically not been as popular. Alberta, right? The Liberal support in Alberta. I'm not going to say the Liberals are going to have 15, 20 seats next election, because they won't. But I guarantee you they'll have more than 3.
You should notice it, though. We were putting up the numbers the other day. Like out of nowhere. Liberal support in Alberta, that should set off alarm bells. But also, if the Liberals get a majority, that Christmas party coming up is going to be one heck of a banger.
Oh, yeah. RH, remarkable support in our super chat today. Just want to let you know how much we appreciate that. RH says, when the NDP dropped social democracy in favor of being the other neoliberal party, they chose irrelevancy. Thomas Mulcair was part of setting that course. Says Nenshi in Alberta is another of that stripe. Nenshi would hate the comparison, but that's fine. RH wonders why sit with a party, the NDP, that generates about as much interest and excitement as paint drying. At least the Conservatives have a storyline to follow. They are genuinely loathsome. That from RH. A fascinating conversation yesterday. I was honored and privileged to sit on the media panel at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce Political Action Day. Chateau Lacombe Hotel, they pack it. I don't know how many people. I'm going to guess 700-800, something like that. These are chamber members, business owners and operators across the province, elected officials in the room,
Premier
media commentators. Premier was there for the Premier's dinner. I was up there with Jen Gerson from The Line, and Rob Breckenridge, who's been a good friend of this show as well, as you know, and he's got his own Substack there, and it was fascinating. In particular, I love it. They go Chatham House rules, so my deal is I'm not going to talk to you about what anybody said in that room, because nobody in that room is going to talk to anybody about what I said. Not that there was anything horrific, but it encourages hot takes. That's the whole point. And I oftentimes enjoy the conversations after the panel, people coming up, shaking hands, snapping photos, talking, swapping business cards. That's the whole purpose of events like this, and one of the real benefits of membership with a Chamber of Commerce, in this case, the Alberta Chambers. But people coming up like in hushed tones and saying like, well, and they just want to know, like, what do you think about, and the one storyline, there's 2 storylines that everyone's following very closely. Number one, based on polling from the Alberta Chambers, and they do such a good job on this. They got their eye on Alberta business, every month. Shauna Feth joins us here in studio. Their polling from their membership shows that nearly, not quite exactly, but nearly 70% of business owners in Alberta say that separation talk is negatively impacting their business. Almost 7 out of 10 are reporting that. Yeah. Another one was the rise of the Liberal Party's popularity. I'm not going to present this as some sort of like, there's not Trudeau mania happening on the prairies with Mark Carney. This is not like the Beatles arriving on the Ed Sullivan Show. I'm not trying to turn this into something it's not. But I had multiple people yesterday want to chat about the difference in leadership and the difference in response to the federal Liberals under Justin Trudeau versus Mark Carney. And it is
vastly different.
It's like, I don't know how you compare it.
Night and day.
Night and day.
Yeah.
So as you're listening to this and you've got your thoughts on it in particular, on the floor crossing, RS here is saying, I think the Liberals could realistically have 6 to 8 seats in Alberta next election. I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, it all depends, of course, as well on who they can recruit as candidates. But 6 to 8, I mean, if they're heading into the election with 3, if Jean does decide to stick around, it sounds like, I mean, again, I got to be careful because this is not from the mouth of Matt Jeneroux, but it is quite possible he may not run again. But if he did, there's a chance he could get reelected. There's a very good chance Eleanor Olszewski would be reelected in Edmonton Centre. There's a very good chance that Corey Hogan would be reelected in Calgary. So you got 3. Could you add 3 more? In urban centers, you're probably not going to see Liberal MPs in rural ridings. I mean, I hate to just sort of rubber stamp it like that and declare it, but I do think that that's probably pretty obvious. But I don't think it's unrealistic that the Liberals, and I think RS is onto something there, could add 3 or 4 more in the cities. It is quite possible. Wise Kyle says you got to get Gerson on the show. She's been on the show. She'll come on again. It's always great talking to her as well. And I love this from Chantel, and I feel it. Chantel, I'm right there with you. She says, I can't wait for the day for politics to be boring, for politics just to work. She says, I would rather, she's building on the comment earlier, she says, I would rather watch paint dry than be goaded into anger every fucking day.
In the city.
Chantel, I get it. I will say this. You know, I said to the people yesterday, here's the one thing I'll share. I'll break the Chatham House rule. And I will share. I'll tell a tale. They often describe it as well as the Vegas rule, right? What happens in the room stays in the room. I did say this. I said, much like COVID-19, and this is an unpopular opinion, I said COVID-19 and Alberta separation is very good if you're in the talk show business.
Oh, yeah.
It may be decimating other businesses across the province of Alberta and causing uncertainty across Canada and abroad, but if you work in talk shows,
oh man,
it's magnificent. You just can't boast about it because it comes across as pretty tacky.
Tomorrow's show title, COVID! Exclamation point. That's it.
Tony says the Alberta Liberal MPs will certainly have to deliver for their ridings, whatever that will be, to get reelected again. Tony, 100%. Lorraine says, I would love to go back to the time when I knew nothing about American politics.
Wasn't that a great time? When you were like, what's going on in the Middle East? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I would also like to go back to a time when politics was a little more boring.
Yeah.
When you turn on the arguments on what's the channel that plays it constantly, and they were just arguing about tax and expenditures and whatever, and people weren't like chucking grenades at each other.
Yeah. Joker 1975 and Kyle are losing their minds in the chat right now. Powered by Park Power, by the way, your friendly local utilities provider. 6 libs going on about this. Kyle's LOLing, says Corey Hogan will probably lose. Guys, I mean, anything could happen. But pay attention to what's happening. I understand that when your party is losing ground in your safest territory, it's very disconcerting, and that's not what's supposed to be happening, right? Like your guy was supposed to be the prime minister, and now he's not, and nobody wants to acknowledge the reasons why. Dude,
it was a lot.
I went on the record.
Go back to the shows where we were just like,
I went on the record and said I would
debate
bet my house. I said I would bet my house that Pierre Poilievre would be the next prime minister of Canada. Thank God. Nobody took me up on it.
In 4 to 6 weeks, everything changed.
I still have that opportunity out there. The one Bitcoin bet on the outcome of Alberta separation. Don't forget that. Mm-hmm. We had someone declare in our live chat a while ago, was it 65% the benchmark? They said that 65% of Albertans will vote to separate. And I said, I'll bet you a Bitcoin
I heard it's
that's
as
not
high
the
as
case.
85.
We'll get lawyers to draw up the agreement. We will do the Bitcoin transfer right here live on the show. Anybody wants to step up, the offer is open.
We're coming to you from Winnipeg today, the new home of the Real Talk.
Processed by RapidXFinancial.com using the promo code Ryan50 for 50% off all fees.
You thought it was cold in Edmonton. We're freezing over here in Winnipeg, guys.
Yeah. Okay. This is a conversation that could continue and will continue, of course. And we welcome your feedback, whether you're leaving a comment on YouTube or perhaps it is an email that you'd like to send us to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Before we go, I just want to point out, friends, our date night with our friends is coming up on the 18th of March. That's when we're going to be hanging out at UCAN Comedy Night. But you can check out, they've got 6 of them, of course, a couple of them in the books already. UCAN, if you go to ucan.ca, read more about their comedy nights. This is an annual tradition and an absolute blast. Week number 2 is coming, and you've still got time to get your tickets for March 16th, 17th, or if you want to hang out with us on the 18th, my understanding is that night is sold out, but you can find out for yourself online at ucancomedy.com. When you're there, you will hear Real Talk in the mix. We are their live auction presenter this year, which means that there's 2 lunches and studio tours with me up for grabs to the highest bidders. That's one of the ways that we're showing our support and, quite frankly, our admiration for what UCAN Youth Services does, just transforming the lives of young adults, opening doors, creating opportunities. And what these young people are doing from there, using their own initiative, their own motivation, their newfound confidence in many circumstances. Man, we will have UCAN's back forever. I'll tell you that much. There's 50-50 tickets, a prize raffle, a silent auction. Some of the shows are sold out, but you can check out ucancomedy.com. We want to see you there the 16th, 17th, or 18th of March. Again, you can check out ucan.ca for more or go directly to ucancomedy.com. And I hope to see you there, Real Talkers. Don't be shy. Come up and say hi if you're there at Rick Bronson's comic strip on the 18th of March. As we wrap, wanted to let you know that we have an Athabasca University professor joining us in our next episode, Dr. Caroline Bazanko, making the trip up, as a matter of fact, to Edmonton to join us in our studio from Calgary, in the historic Mercer Warehouse right here in downtown Edmonton. She's a psychologist with a specific focus on healthy habits for teens and families, including screen time. If you have a question for her, send it now to talk@ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.